Prospero is burning, 70,000 warriors dead, not killed by chaos, not by Xenos, by their brothers, and the man responsible, he sent a warning. This is not a story about traitor, this is a story about a father who destroyed the son that loved him the most. The story of Magnus the Red. So let's stick to the end and make sure to subscribe. Let's begin. Before Prospero Burns, there was a boy who could see everything. Magnus was the 15th Primarch. Found on a world called Prospero, a planet of scholars, sorcerers, and libraries that stretched for miles, a civilization built entirely on knowledge. He fit there completely. Magnus arrived on Prospero as a child, and within years he had consumed everything the planet had to offer. History, mathematics, the nature of the warp itself. His psychic ability was so vast, so raw, that most Primarchs could not even stand next to it without feeling his weight. Then the Emperor came to find him, and when he did, he recognized something in Magnus that he saw in almost none of the others, a mind like his own. Magnus was a scholar, the philosopher, the one Primarch who could sit across the Emperor and debate the fundamental nature of the universe, not as a student, as an equal. Magnus loved the Emperor, not out of programming, not out of duty. He loved him the way a son loved the father who has given him everything, with complete, absolute devotion. He built the 1,000 Sons in their image, a legion of warriors who believed knowledge was the highest calling. The 15th Legion, the smallest of all, but arguably the most gifted, and they were dying. The flesh change started quietly, as starters began to mutate, not to the control enhancement of the gene seed, something else, something catastrophic. A warrior who woke in the night, bones shifting, flesh running like water, body losing the shape of a human being entirely. They dissolved, become something unrecognizable, something that had to be put down. By the time the 1,000 Sons admitted the scale of the problem, hundreds of his sons had already been consumed, and Magnus went looking for answers. Most Primarchs would have brought these to the Emperor, filed a report, waited. Magnus went to the warp. He found something there, or something found him. Whether it was Jinch himself, moving the pieces of Magnus' fate long before Magnus understood the board, or simply forbidden knowledge floating free in the immaterium, Magnus found a solution, a ritual, a way to bind his sons back to their humanity and stop the mutation from spreading. The cost was his eye. He gave it without hesitation. He returned from the warp missing half his sight and carrying knowledge that no human being was ever meant to possess. He performed the ritual. It worked. The flesh change stopped. His sons were saved, and Magnus had just made his first deal with something that never forgets a debt. The Emperor noticed it. He noticed that Magnus was using sorcery, that the 1,000 Sons wielded warp power that went far beyond anything the Imperial had sanctioned. And he wasn't the only one watching. MUTATION hated it. Leman Russ, the 6th Primarch, the Wolf King, despised psychic power with a visceral, almost physical revulsion. He had seen what the warp did to men. He didn't trust it. He didn't trust anyone who used it. The Emperor convened the council. Every legion, every Primarch, gathered to answer one question. Should psychic powers be permitted within the Space Marine legions? Magnus stood and argued yes. He made the case in front of the assembled Imperium, in front of the Emperor himself. Knowledge cannot be unmade. Power cannot be unlearned. The warp is not evil. It is a tool, and like every tool, it becomes dangerous only in weak hands. His sons were not weak. Their discipline was absolute. Their purpose was the Imperium purpose. Leman Russ stood and called him a fool playing with the fire, and he didn't understand. The Emperor made his decision. No sorcery within the Legion. The 1,000 Sons were to cease all psychic practices, immediately, no exemptions. Magnus bowed his head. He agreed. He walked out of that chamber, returned to Prospero, gathered his sons, his brilliant, irreplaceable psychic sons, and he told them to be silent. No more sorcery, no more warp side, no more of the gifts that made them what they were. And they obeyed, because Magnus told them to. Then Magnus saw something was never meant to see. His psychic senses had never truly switched off. No edict can unmake what a man fundamentally is. Magnus could still feel the warp, the way a man blinded in one eye still sees with the other. And through the remaining sight, he saw Horus. He saw the 16th Brahma, He saw the corruption, chaos touching the War Master's soul, reshaping it, turning the Emperor's most beloved general into something else entirely. He felt the shape of what was coming, a heresy, a civil war that would tear the Imperium apart from the inside. The vision was complete. It was real. Magnus knew it with a certainty that transcended doubt. And now he faced a choice. He could stay silent, honor the edict they had sworn to uphold, follow the law and trust the Emperor would discover the truth on his own before it was too late. Or he could break his oath, use the very powers the Emperor had forbidden for him to using it, send a warning that might stop everything. If Magnus said nothing and Horus was stopping in time, billions would die, worlds would burn, and the heresy would happen. If Magnus broke the edict, he would face punishment, but the Imperium might survive. He chose the warning. He reached into the world with the full, unstrained force of his psychic power, everything he had suppressed since the Council, every gift he had silenced out of love for the Emperor. He unleashed it all at once, a single transmission, a single act of desperation, projected across the galaxy directly to Terra. The message arrived, and it tore the palace open. This is the part nobody tells you. Beneath the Imperial Palace, hidden from every Primarch, every Legion commander, every person in the Imperium, the Emperor had been running a secret project for decades. He was building a webway conduit. The alien Eldar had traveled the galaxy for millennia through a network of stable warp tunnels, the webway. Safe, fast, no navigators, no Galar fields, no exposure to the open sea of the Immaterium. The Emperor wanted that for the humanity. He had been quietly, an entry point, a private corridor through the webway that would eventually connect Terra to the whole of the Imperium. Safe passage for the entire human species, forever. It was the greatest undertaking in human history. Magnus destroyed it in seconds. His psychic transmission hit the webway like a battering ram through glass. Worlds that had taken decades to construct were annihilating in a heartbeat. The conduit tore open. Demons poured through. Thousands of the Emperor's servants, adepts, scholars, warriors stationed in tunnels died holding the breach. The Emperor himself had to abandon the project and seal the damage personally. The vision of a safe, warp-free human empire gone permanently. Magnus hadn't even known that the Webway project existed. He had sent a warning in the only way available to him, and in doing so, caused more destruction than any other enemy the Imperium had managed in decades. The Emperor's response was to send Leman Russ. The order was censor, no execution, no annihilation. Bring Magnus back to Terra. Let him answer for what he had done. Chancellor. Horus received the order first. He told Russ something different. He told the Wolf King that the Emperor wanted Prospero destroyed, that Magnus had turned traitor, that the Thousand Sons were a threat to be eliminated, not a legion to be reasoned with. Russ believed him. The Space Wolves arrived in orbit above Prospero. With them came the Sister of Silence, Null warriors who could extinguish psychic powers with their mere presence, and the Custodians, the Emperor's old bodyguard, sent to sanction a Primarch. They didn't come to talk. Prospero burned. Libraries, centuries of scholarship, irreplaceable text, knowledge accumulated across generations of the finest minds of the humanity species had produced, reduced to ash. The cities, the towers, the academics that Magnus had built with his own hands, and the Thousand Sons. Warriors who had served the Emperor without question. Scholars who had spent their entire existence in pursuit of knowledge. Sorcerers who had only ever used their gifts in the Imperium's name. 70,000 of them, dead in a single afternoon, because Magnus sent a warning. Here's the moment that breaks the story open. Magnus didn't fight back. He raised a psychic dome over the remnants of his people, a shield, not a counterattack. He held the worst of the household at bay, but he didn't unleash the full scope of his powers. He didn't call for reinforcement. He didn't run. He stood in the ruins of Prospero, and he accepted. He had broken the edict. He had shattered the webway. He had done this not as a traitor, not out of ambition, but through an act of absolute love that had gone catastrophically wrong. He understood that, and so he accepted the punishment. Until the very last moment. When the few hundred sons who had survived were about to be annihilated, when extinction was seconds away, Tzeentch appeared. Not for the first time. Magnus knew his presence. He had known since the ritual that cost him his eye. The deal was simple. Surrender yourself and your sons will live. Magnus took it. In a single, irreversible moment, he transported every survivor Thousand Sons from Prosperos to the dying atmosphere, through the warp, to a world deep inside the Eye of Terror. A world that would become known as the planet of the sorcerers. He saved them, and he damned himself to do it. Magnus the Red became a demon Primarch of Tzeentch. The Emperor's most brilliant son, the scholar, the philosopher, the Primarch who had given his eye, his world, his legion, and finally his souls, every sacrifice made for someone else, now he served the architect of fate. His sons didn't escape clean either. Years later, Magnus' chief librarian, Ahriman, watched his brother begin to mutate again. The flesh change was returning. He cast the Rubric of Ahriman, a spell designed to save the Thousand Sons from the same mutation he had haunted them since the beginning. And it worked. Badly. Every Thousand Sons without sufficient psychic power was reduced to dust inside the armor. Hollow warriors, souls locked in metal shells, bound to march and fight for 10,000 years with no memory of who they were. Rubric Marines. The men Magnus had sacrificed everything to protect. Empty. He had given his eye to save them from the flesh change. He had given his word to send a warning that might protect them. He had given himself, his very souls, to pull them from the fire of Prospero. And they couldn't even remember his name. So this is not a story about traitor. This is a story about a son who believed his father completely, who loved the Imperium so absolutely that he broke his own oath to protect it. And the father responded by burning everything he had ever built. So here's the question. The Emperor kept the webway a secret. He never told Magnus existed. Magnus broke an edict to send a warning he had no other way to send, for a catastrophe only he could see coming. So, was the Emperor's response justice, or was the act of a man who could not admit that he had kept the wrong secrets? So let me know in the comments if Magnus was right, or if the Emperor had no choice. Again, thank you for watching, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.